There is a special kind of betrayal that only family can deliver. It doesn't come as a single, sharp stab, but as 1,000 tiny cuts of manipulation, condescension, and broken promises, until you find yourself bleeding out in a public place, surrounded by strangers. I never thought the man I vowed to spend my life with would become a stranger I feared in my own kitchen. I never imagined his sisters, the women I was told to call family, would become my chief tormentors. They didn't just take my car, they systematically dismantled my confidence, my independence, and my sense of safety, leaving me a hollowed-out version of myself, struggling to survive with 2 small children on a crowded subway. But the moment that shattered the last of my denial wasn't their cruelty. It was the look on my father's face when he saw what was left of me. And the 2 words he spoke that day didn't just promise the return of a vehicle. They promised a reckoning. Welcome, everyone, to a story that is as much about the quiet strength of love as it is about the loud violence of betrayal. If you're new here, prepare for a journey. Make sure you're subscribed and have notifications on, because this story unfolds in layers, each more revealing than the last. Now, let's begin with Jessica's story. The 5:45 p.m. express train was a metal serpent slithering through the city's underbelly, its cars filled with the weary, the resigned, and the silently judgmental. I, Jessica Monroe Hayes, was the evening's main attraction, a living diorama of maternal failure. My body was a symphony of aches. The tendons in my forearms screamed from the weight of 2 overstuffed, environmentally conscious grocery bags that felt like they were filled with lead bricks, their thin, reusable handles cutting deep, angry red trenches into my palms. The muscles in my shoulders and back were knotted with a deep, throbbing pain that had become my new baseline. On my left hip, my 3-year-old son, Owen, was a tempest of pure, unadulterated misery. His little body was rigid, arched away from me in a state of complete sensory overload. His face was a blotchy, tear-streaked mess, his cries a high-pitched, relentless siren of exhaustion that cut through the train's rhythmic clatter and the low hum of 100 private conversations. Each wail was a physical vibration against my chest, a desperate Morse code I could no longer decipher. Tugging at the hem of my worn jacket with a persistent, rhythmic desperation was my 5-year-old daughter, Lily. "Mommy, why can't we just drive? My feet hurt. I'm so tired. I want to go home in the car. Please, the car." Each question was a tiny, expertly aimed dart of guilt, piercing the fragile armor I was trying to maintain. How do you distill the complex, adult poison of marital betrayal, of familial manipulation, into a language a kindergartner can understand? How do you explain that the beautiful, reliable, silver SUV, a vehicle her grandfather had personally researched for months, chosen specifically for its 5-star safety rating and its ability to safely transport his most precious cargo, was not waiting for us in its usual spot in our driveway? How do you confess that it was sitting, parked casually and arrogantly, in the impeccably landscaped driveway of her Aunt Amber's townhouse, a place it had seemingly adopted as its new, permanent home? And the most impossible question of all, how do you tell your daughter that her own father, the man who was supposed to be my partner, had been the one to hand over the keys, to decide that his wife's comfort and his children's safety were negotiable commodities in the twisted economy of his family's demands? The train lurched violently as it hit a poorly aligned switch, and my precarious balance, already compromised by the uneven weights I carried, deserted me completely. I stumbled sideways, my shoulder colliding hard with a man in a suit who was buried in his financial newspaper. He grunted, shooting me a look of pure, unvarnished annoyance over the top of his glasses. One of the grocery bags slipped from my numb, sweating fingers, and a heavy can of tomato soup clattered noisily to the floor, rolling with a sinister spin under a nearby seat. Just as the entire bag was about to spill its contents of pasta, cereal, and fresh produce onto the grimy, litter-strewn floor, a woman in a crisp, navy blue business suit reached out with a swift, almost graceful motion and caught it. She handed it back to me, her expression not one of irritation, but of a weary, knowing sympathy that somehow made me feel 1,000 times worse. "Rough day?" she asked softly, her eyes flicking from my face to Owen's hysterical form and then to Lily's frightened eyes. That small, simple act of kindness was the final straw. It was an unspoken acknowledgement of my very public, very visible failure. It confirmed that I was exactly what I appeared to be, a woman who could not manage the fundamental logistics of her own life, a mother who was failing to provide basic comfort for her children. I mumbled a strangled thank you, my cheeks flaming with a humiliation that felt like a physical burn. I tried to shift Owen, to bounce him in a soothing, rhythmic motion I had mastered years ago, but my arms were trembling uncontrollably, a violent, visible tremor born from his solid weight, the cutting plastic handles, and a crushing, soul-deep exhaustion that had been my constant, unwelcome companion for 3 long, relentless weeks. This was a universe away from the life I had been promised, from the future I had meticulously, perhaps naively, built in my mind. The memory surfaced, sharp and painful as a shard of glass. 2 years ago, standing under the bright, sterile lights of the dealership, the intoxicating smell of new car interior filling my senses. My dad, Robert Monroe, had pressed the cool, smooth key fob into my palm. His hands, rough and calloused from decades of lifting, hammering, and building his construction empire from the ground up, had closed over mine, his grip firm and sure. His eyes, usually crinkled at the corners with easy laughter, were intensely, deadly serious. "This is for you and my grandbabies, Jessica," he'd said, his voice low and firm, meant for my ears only. "It's the safest model on the market. I don't ever want you worrying about breaking down on a dark, lonely highway with those 2 little ones in the back. This." He had reached out and tapped the roof of the SUV with his knuckles, a solid, resonant sound. "This is my peace of mind." That car was never just a mode of transport. It was a mobile sanctuary, his fierce, protective love made manifest in steel, airbags, and all-wheel drive. A tangible, daily promise that he would always, always find a way to keep us safe. And I had failed him. I had let them take it without a fight that mattered. "Mommy," Lily whispered, her voice small and frightened as she pressed her entire body against my leg, seeking shelter from the judging eyes and the overwhelming noise. "That man is looking at us." I braced myself, summoning the last dregs of my energy to offer a weary, apologetic smile to another commuter whose peaceful journey home we were so clearly destroying. I turned my head, preparing to mouth a silent, "I'm so sorry." And my world simply stopped turning. The noise of the train faded into a distant, muffled roar. The other passengers blurred into an indistinct background. "Jessica?" The voice cut through everything, the train's metallic screech, the tinny beat of music leaking from headphones, Owen's desperate cries, and the low murmur of 100 conversations. It was a voice I knew as intimately as my own heartbeat. My dad. There he was. Robert Monroe, standing not 10 feet away, still in his steel-toed work boots and jeans dusted with a fine layer of drywall powder and sawdust from whatever project he'd been immersed in that day. His face, usually a mask of confident authority and quiet competence, was a canvas of pure, unadulterated confusion. He was scanning the scene before him like it was a complex blueprint with a fundamental, catastrophic error he couldn't quite believe: his daughter, disheveled and drowning in public, his grandchildren, one in the throes of a full-blown meltdown, the other clinging in wide-eyed fear, and the cheap, reusable grocery bags that spoke volumes about a life sliding into quiet, desperate hardship. "Dad," I said, but my voice betrayed me, emerging as a thin, reedy squeak, the sound of a terrified child. He didn't pause. He didn't look around in embarrassment. He moved through the packed car like a ship cutting through a dense fog, his presence commanding enough that people instinctively shifted in their seats to create a path for him. When he reached us, his gaze was a high-beam spotlight, missing no excruciating detail: the generic grocery bags straining with discount labels, Owen's blotchy, tear-streaked face, Lily's wide, uncertain eyes, and the profound, bone-weary exhaustion that I felt etched into the very marrow of my bones. His question, when it came, was so simple, so logical, that it acted like a sledgehammer on the fragile dam I had built to hold my emotions in check. "Jessica," he asked, his brow furrowed in genuine, uncomprehending bewilderment, "why aren't you using the car I gave you?" There was no accusation in his tone. Only a search for a reasonable answer to a situation that defied all reason. And because there was no reasonable answer, the dam shattered. Hot, shameful tears welled up instantly, overspilling my lids and tracing clean paths through the grime and sweat of the day on my cheeks. I couldn't speak. I couldn't form a single word. Trevor and his sisters took it, I finally whispered, the confession feeling like a betrayal of the family I had married into, yet also a desperate, necessary unburdening of a terrible secret. I couldn't meet his gaze, focusing instead on a fresh scuff on the toe of his work boot. His expression transformed in a heartbeat. The confusion didn't just fade, it was vaporized, replaced by a sharp, focused intensity one knew all too well. It was the look he got just before he fired a dishonest subcontractor, or when he was about to dismantle a city inspector's unreasonable demand piece by logical piece. It was the face of a man who had identified a critical structural flaw in a building, or in this case, a life, and was already calculating the fastest, most permanent way to fix it. Without a word of further inquiry or empty comfort, he bent his knees, his movements economical and powerful, and scooped Owen up into his strong, capable arms. My son, my screaming, distressed, inconsolable son, experienced an immediate, almost miraculous transformation. His crying hiccuped to a stunned stop. A small, shuddering sigh escaped his lips, and he simply laid his head down on his grandfather's broad, familiar shoulder, his little body going completely limp with an instinctual trust and relief that brought a fresh, silent wave of tears to my eyes. The physical weight lifting from my body was so sudden it made me sway on my feet, but the emotional weight in my chest condensed into a heavier, denser ball of leaden shame. "What do you mean, took it?" Dad's voice was calm, deceptively so. It was the dead, quiet calm that resides in the center of a hurricane, a silence that promised coming violence. I just shook my head, a fresh torrent of silent tears spilling over. I couldn't possibly explain the twisted family politics, the layers of emotional blackmail, the sheer, surreal absurdity of it all in this very public, very humiliating arena, with Lily's keen, intelligent ears absorbing every syllable. He didn't press me. Instead, he held my gaze, his blue eyes steady and sure, and he said, "Don't worry." 2 words. Just 2 simple words. But they were imbued with the weight of 1,000 promises he had never broken. They were not empty consolation, they were a blood oath. In that moment, staring into his unwavering eyes, I believed him with a certainty that felt more solid than the ground beneath my feet. He shifted Owen's sleeping weight to one arm as if my solid 3-year-old were a feather pillow, and then he took both heavy, cutting grocery bags from my numb, trembling hands as if they were filled with air. "What's your stop?" "Belmont Avenue," I managed to choke out, my voice thick with unshed tears and a week's worth of swallowed screams. The next few minutes passed in a surreal, dreamlike sequence. Lily, mesmerized and wide-eyed, slipped her small, trusting hand into mine, her gaze fixed on her grandfather. I could almost see the gears turning in her head. Why didn't we call Grandpa before? Why did we struggle alone when he could make the scary noises stop and carry Owen so easily? Why was Mommy crying all the time if Grandpa could fix it? When the train screeched to a jarring halt at our station, Dad led our small, ragged procession off the car, a pillar of unshakable strength guiding us through the river of rushing, anonymous bodies. As we emerged from the stifling, urine-scented underground into the cool, evening air, I took a deep, shuddering breath, the first that felt like it reached the bottom of my lungs in weeks. He walked purposefully toward his familiar, rugged, red pickup truck, parked illegally but conveniently near the station entrance, a symbol of pragmatic solutions. Clutching at a shred of normalcy, at anything to break the heavy, significant silence between us, I asked, "Were you coming from a job site?" "Final meeting with a developer about a new waterfront project," he said, his tone even and matter-of-fact as he opened the back door of the extended cab. With practiced ease, he buckled a now drowsy Owen into the high-backed booster seat he always kept there for his grandchildren. He was always prepared, always thinking 3 steps ahead, a trait I had always admired and now felt like a lifeline. Lucky thing I took the subway instead of driving. Couldn't find a spot for the truck downtown. But as he turned to help Lily climb into her seat, the station's harsh fluorescent light caught the hard line of his profile, and I saw the muscle in his jaw clench and unclench rhythmically. This wasn't luck to him. This was an intervention, a sign he should have seen sooner, and he was processing a cold, building fury at the situation and, I suspected, at himself. Once both children were safely settled, their seatbelts clicking into place with a sound of finality, he closed the door with a soft, solid thud and turned to face me. The full force of his attention was both a profound comfort and a quiet terror. "Get in," he said, his voice leaving no room for question or delay. It was the voice he used when there was a crisis on a job site and he needed immediate, unquestioning compliance. "We need to talk." I climbed into the passenger seat, and the familiar, comforting scent of fresh sawdust, stale coffee, and worn leather enveloped me like a blanket from my childhood. How many times had this very truck been my sanctuary? How many times had Dad picked me up from high school after a soul-crushing day, from a movie theater after a disastrous first date, from my first apartment when a pipe burst and I had no idea what to do? The memories were a cascade of him being my rock. And here I was again, a 32-year-old woman with a husband and 2 children of her own, right back in the passenger seat, needing to be rescued from the life I had chosen. The shame was a corrosive acid in my stomach, eating me from the inside out. He didn't start the engine. Instead, he turned his entire body in the seat to face me, his work boot knocking softly against the gear shift. In the dim, ambient light of the dashboard, I saw something in his eyes I had never seen directed at me before. It wasn't the flash-in-the-pan anger of my rebellious teenage years. It was something colder, more calculated, and infinitely more dangerous. A protective, paternal fury that had been simmering on a low boil for years, watching Trevor's subtle controlling behaviors, and had just been cranked up to its maximum heat. "How long has this been going on, Jessica?" he asked, his voice dangerously low, each word precise and weighted. 3 weeks, I admitted, the words a shameful whisper into the quiet of the cab. And then, as if a floodgate had been opened, it all spilled out. The story tumbled from my lips in a disjointed, emotional rush, punctuated by sobs I could no longer contain. I started with the perfectly reasonable request at the suffocating Sunday family dinner, how Amber, with her calculated, insincere smile, had spun a tale of high-end clients and first impressions, how Trevor had agreed on my behalf before I could even form a sentence of protest, how one day of lending had stretched, with relentless pressure, into a weekend, then a full week, and then how Nicole's car had suddenly, conveniently, developed mysterious transmission problems that required my SUV specifically. I tried to say no, I pleaded, as if he were a jury of one and I was begging for leniency. I told Trevor, I practically begged him, listing the kids' pediatrician appointments, the massive grocery hauls that were impossible on the bus, Lily's ballet class on Thursday afternoons across town, but he said I was being selfish. He said that family helps family, and that I was failing to understand what that meant. That I was putting material things before the success and well-being of his sisters. Dad's eyes narrowed, the skin around them tightening into fine lines. I could see the pieces clicking into place in his mind, forming a picture he deeply disliked. And when you put your foot down? When you finally demanded what was rightfully yours? What happened then? I recounted the scene in my kitchen from the previous Wednesday, my voice dropping to a horrified whisper, as if saying it too loudly would make it real all over again. They were all there. Trevor, Amber, and Nicole. They cornered me. It was like a coordinated ambush. They said if I didn't stop being difficult, I would see what life was like without his support. Amber called me an ungrateful brat who didn't know how good I had it. Nicole said, she said just because my father had money now didn't mean I was raised with any class. That I was still just a construction worker's daughter at heart, pretending to fit into a world I didn't belong in. And Trevor, he just stood there and let them. He didn't defend me. He didn't tell them to stop. He agreed with them. I was crying fully now, ugly, gasping sobs that shook my entire body, tears I'd been stubbornly, pridefully holding back for weeks finally breaking free. I was scared, Dad. Not that he'd hit me, I never truly thought that, but the way they all looked at me, their faces, like I was an obstacle. A problem to be removed. So I just gave up. I handed over the keys. I let them win. He held up a hand, a sharp, clean gesture that stopped my torrent of words mid-sob. He pulled his phone from the pocket of his dusty jeans, scrolled through his contacts with a thick, calloused finger, and hit a number, putting it on speakerphone so I could hear every word of the conversation. A crisp, efficient male voice answered on the second ring. Tom speaking. Tom, it's Rob Monroe. Dad's voice was all business, flat and hard, the voice he used when a multi-million-dollar deal was on the line. I need you to drop everything. I need you to find out everything you can about a man named Trevor Hayes and his two sisters, Amber and Nicole Hayes. I mean everything. Financial records, credit reports, legal issues, both civil and criminal, employment history, social media deep dive. I want to know if they have parking tickets, if they've defaulted on a student loan, if they so much as have an overdue library book. I'll pay your triple time rate, whatever retainer you need, and I need preliminary findings on my desk by tomorrow morning. He hung up without waiting for a reply or acknowledgement. The finality of the action echoed in the silent cab. He finally looked at me again, and for a fleeting second, the iron mask of the businessman slipped, and I saw only my father, his heart breaking for me. You didn't fail at anything, sweetheart, he said, his voice softening just for a moment, a brief, warm island in a cold sea of resolve. But this? This ends now. Tonight. The investigation has begun. The first thread has been pulled, and the entire fabric of Jessica's life is beginning to unravel. Can you feel the dreadful anticipation? If this story is gripping you, if you need to know what Tom the investigator uncovers, please let me know in the comments below. Just type "watching from" your city/country. It's incredible to see our community from all over the world connecting through these stories. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more powerful narratives. The drive to my dad's house was shrouded in a heavy, profound silence, broken only by the soft, rhythmic breathing of Owen, who had succumbed completely to sleep in his car seat, and the occasional sniffle from Lily, who was fighting her own exhaustion. She was uncharacteristically quiet, her small face pressed against the cool glass of the window, watching the city lights blur into streaks of gold and white. I watched the familiar neighborhoods slip by, each one a marker in a life that now felt like it belonged to someone else. Pulling into the long, gravel driveway of the two-story brick house I'd grown up in felt like crossing a border into a safer, saner country. This house wasn't just a building, it was a monument to my father's love and determination. He had literally built it with his own hands, every brick laid with care, every beam placed with a vision for a future filled with family and laughter. It was a fortress of love and stability, a stark, painful contrast to the beautifully decorated but emotionally cold and manipulative house I shared with Trevor. Dad carried a sleeping Owen inside as if he were weightless, his large, capable hand cradling my son's head with an innate tenderness. I guided a sleepy Lily, her small hand clinging to mine. He had kept the guest room always ready for us, a hope I now realized with a pang of guilt that I had too often neglected for Trevor's family obligations. The room was warm and inviting, with a double bed for me and a trundle bed that pulled out for the kids. He'd even framed a colorful, crayon drawing Lily had made for him last Christmas, a lopsided house with a smiling sun, taped proudly to the wall. The sight of it, that simple testament of a child's love so openly displayed, brought fresh tears to my eyes. "Get them settled," Dad said, his voice a low, steady rumble that seemed to vibrate through the floorboards. "I'll be in my study making some calls." I changed the kids into their pajamas, their limp, trusting bodies a painful reminder of why I had to be strong. As I tucked the soft comforter around Lily's chin, her eyes fluttered open, hazy with sleep. "Mommy," she whispered, her voice small in the quiet room. "Is Grandpa going to make the bad people give our car back?" The simple, direct faith in her question stole the air from my lungs. She had distilled the entire, messy, adult situation into its purest form, good guys versus bad guys, and Grandpa was the ultimate good guy. "Yes, baby," I whispered, my voice thick with emotion as I leaned down and kissed her forehead, breathing in her sweet, sleepy scent. "Grandpa is going to fix it." She nodded, a tiny, satisfied smile touching her lips, and was asleep within seconds, her faith absolute. Downstairs, I found my father in his study, a room that smelled richly of old books, worn leather, and strong coffee. The walls were lined with engineering schematics and family photos. He was on the phone, his broad back to me, his posture rigid. "I don't care what time it is, Patricia," he was saying, his voice a low, controlled force. "I need you on this first thing in the morning. We're talking potential fraud, attempted auto theft, and a deliberately toxic custody situation designed to intimidate." He listened for a moment, his head nodding slightly. Good. I'll have Tom's preliminary report by then. Meet me at my daughter's house at 9 a.m. sharp. And Patricia? He paused, and his voice dropped another octave. Be ready for a fight. This isn't a negotiation. It's an extraction. He hung up and turned, his face grim. That was my lawyer, Patricia Chin. She's a shark in a suit. The best. Dad, a lawyer? So soon? I wrapped my arms around myself, a sudden chill gripping me despite the warmth of the house. I need a minute to think. To process all of this. There's nothing to think about, Jessica, he said, his tone leaving no room for argument. What you described in that truck wasn't a marital spat. It was a coordinated campaign of intimidation and theft. Now, I'm going to get your car. Where are the spare keys? In my nightstand drawer. The top one. But Trevor, he might be there. He'll be furious. A cold, almost predatory smile touched my father's lips for a fleeting second. I'm counting on it. While he left to retrieve my keys, a mission he undertook with the focused determination of a special forces operative, I wandered into the living room, my mind a chaotic whirlwind of fear, shame, and a tiny, flickering spark of hope. The reality of the situation was crashing down on me with the force of a tidal wave. Lawyers. Private investigators. This wasn't just about getting my car back, this was about systematically dismantling my marriage, my family structure, the entire life I had known for the past 7 years. The weight of it was suffocating, a physical pressure on my chest. I needed to feel useful, to do something with my hands to quiet the screaming in my head. I started unpacking the few bags I'd grabbed in my panicked haste, the motions of folding tiny shirts and pants a small, calming ritual. As I lifted a stack of my sweaters, a folded piece of paper, different from the rest, thicker, wider, more official, fluttered out from between the folds of a cashmere pullover and landed soundlessly on the polished hardwood floor. I must have grabbed it from Trevor's desk in my blind rush, my hands sweeping through papers without looking. A part of me had known, even then, to gather anything that might be important. I bent down and picked it up, my heart beginning to hammer a frantic rhythm against my ribs. I unfolded it. It was a draft bill of sale, just like the one I'd found in his jacket pocket. But this one wasn't blank. Every field was meticulously filled in with Trevor's distinctive, slanted handwriting. Vehicle make/model, silver SUV. Year, the year of my car. VIN, my car's actual VIN number. Seller, Trevor Hayes. Buyer, a name I didn't recognize. Selling price, $15,000. But that wasn't the part that made the blood drain from my face and my knees go weak with a sudden, violent vertigo. Scrawled in the margin at the bottom, next to a proposed meeting date for tomorrow, was a note in Trevor's frantic script. Amber, the DMV buddy is ready. Just need her signature. We'll forge it. Get the cash. My debt to Marco will be clear after this. Don't tell Nicole, she'll panic. The room spun. The words seemed to pulse on the page, ugly and menacing. Forge my signature. A DMV buddy. A debt to someone named Marco. This was so much bigger, so much more sinister than I had ever allowed myself to imagine. It wasn't just about family pressure or casual cruelty, it was about a cold, calculated, premeditated felony. Trevor was in debt to someone dangerous, a loan shark, a criminal, and he and his sister were planning to commit fraud to pay it off. My car wasn't just borrowed, it was already sold in their minds, and they were willing to break the law to do it. I was still standing there, frozen in the middle of the room, the paper shaking so violently in my hand it rustled like a dead leaf, when my father returned. He held my car keys aloft with a satisfied, grim look. It was right where you said. He didn't even notice me come in. He was on the couch, watching TV. He saw my face, the absolute terror that must have been painted across it. Jessica? What is it? What's wrong? I couldn't speak. My throat had closed up, sealed shut by pure, undiluted fear. I just handed him the paper, my arm moving stiffly, as if it were no longer part of my body. He read it. His expression, which had been one of determined, proactive anger, turned to something truly frightening. It was a cold, still, absolute fury. He looked from the paper to me, and his voice was dangerously, unnervingly quiet. "Get some sleep," he said, his eyes like chips of blue flint. "You and the kids are safe here. No one is getting to you in this house." He folded the paper with precise, deliberate movements and slid it into his own pocket. "I have work to do." The sheer audacity of their plan is staggering. Forgery? A debt to a criminal? If your heart is pounding right now, type "This is intense" in the comments. Let's see how many people are as gripped by this twist as we are. I didn't sleep. I laid in the unfamiliar bed, listening to the comforting, rhythmic sounds of my children's peaceful breathing, each soft exhale a stark contrast to the storm of dread and betrayal raging in my mind. Marco. Forge her signature. DMV buddy. Debt. The words played on a relentless, terrifying loop, a mantra of my impending doom. Downstairs, I could hear the low, constant murmur of my father's voice. He was on the phone for what felt like hours, a general marshalling his forces in the dead of night. I drifted in and out of a fitful, nightmare-riddled sleep, only to be jolted awake each time by the phantom sound of a slamming door or a raised voice. Sometime around 6 a.m., I heard the heavy front door open and close with a solid thud, followed by the sound of his truck starting and pulling away. He was on the move. When I finally gave up on sleep and came downstairs a few hours later, the smell of fresh coffee and sizzling bacon filled the house. It was a normal, comforting smell that felt utterly alien in the context of our situation. Dad was already at the kitchen table, his laptop open, surrounded by a fresh stack of printed documents. He looked tired, shadows under his eyes, but he was razor-sharp, his gaze clear and intensely focused. "Sit down," he said without looking up, pushing a plate of scrambled eggs and bacon toward an empty setting. "Eat. You're going to need your strength today." I sat, my stomach churning too much to even consider food. He finally looked at me, his expression unreadable. He slid the first document across the worn wooden table toward me. It was a financial report from Tom, the investigator. "It's worse than we thought," Dad stated, his voice flat and devoid of emotion, which was somehow more frightening than if he'd been shouting. "Trevor's gambling, it's not just a bad habit. It's a full-blown addiction. Online sports betting, high-stakes international poker sites, and," he tapped a specific line on the paper, "regular, weekend trips to a casino upstate owned by a man named Marco Spinelli. He's into Spinelli's organization for just over $80,000. The vig, the interest, is crippling him. 80,000. The number was so large, so abstract, it was almost meaningless. But the consequences were terrifyingly concrete. This wasn't just debt, it was a noose. "There's more," Dad continued, his voice like chipped ice. He showed me another document, this one filled with official-looking letterheads and complaint summaries. Amber. Her real estate license is hanging by a single, frayed thread. 3 separate, formal complaints for grossly inflating appraisal values to secure larger commissions. She's under active investigation by her own broker. She didn't need your car for clients, she needed it to maintain the illusion of success, to project an image of wealth while her professional world crumbled around her. He placed a final sheet in front of me, this one a signed affidavit from a dental office manager. And Nicole. Fired from her last job at Bright Smile Dental for systematic insurance fraud. She was billing for deep cleanings and fluoride treatments that were never performed. The practice didn't press charges in exchange for her immediate, quiet resignation. She's essentially unemployable in her field. I stared at the evidence spread across the table, the financial records, the professional complaints, the damning affidavit. The pieces of the horrible puzzle snapped into place with a sickening finality. They weren't just bullies, they were a trio of drowning, desperate people, and they had decided that the easiest way to save themselves was to use me as their life raft, even if it meant holding me underwater with them to do it. They saw my car, my stability, my father's gift, as an unearned resource they were entitled to. The car, I whispered, my voice hoarse. It was never about impressing clients or a broken-down car. It was going to be a quick, desperate cash infusion to get Marco Spinelli off Trevor's back. Dad finished for me, his expression grim. They were desperate. And desperate people do stupid, reckless, and dangerously stupid things. At that moment, the doorbell rang, a sharp, authoritative sound that made me jump. Dad didn't flinch. He stood up, his movements deliberate. "It's time." I followed him to the door. Standing on the porch was Patricia Chen, a sharp-eyed woman in an impeccably tailored suit that screamed of competence and expense, and Officer Martinez, the police officer from my dad's past, his uniform a stark reminder that this situation had escalated far beyond a family dispute. "It's time," Dad repeated, and it sounded like a verdict. The drive to my house was a silent, grim procession. My SUV, now legally back in my possession, sat in Dad's driveway, but it felt different now. Tainted. Soiled by the criminal intent that had been plotted around it. We pulled up in a convoy, Dad's truck, my SUV, and Officer Martinez's patrol car. My stomach was a nest of writhing, cold snakes. Dad didn't hesitate. He marched up the walkway and knocked, not a request for entry, but a declaration of arrival. The door was yanked open a few seconds later by Trevor, his face a mask of fury that morphed into stunned, wide-eyed confusion when he saw the small army assembled on his doorstep. "What the hell is this, Jessica?" he demanded, his eyes darting from me to my father to the uniformed officer. "An ambush? You brought the cops to my house?" "This is a conversation," my dad said, his voice calm but carrying an undeniable, bedrock authority. He didn't wait for an invitation. He simply walked forward, forcing Trevor to step back, and we all filed into the living room I had so carefully decorated with dreams of a happy family life. Amber and Nicole were there, perched on my expensive linen sofa like a pair of vultures, their coffee mugs in hand. Their smug, superior expressions vanished, replaced by a flash of pure alarm when they saw Officer Martinez standing formally by the door. "You brought the police?" Amber sneered, trying to reclaim her usual condescending tone, but it came out thin and reedy, lacking all conviction. Dad ignored her completely, as if she were a gnat buzzing in the room. He set his briefcase on the coffee table, the same table where I'd served birthday cakes and holiday dinners, and began laying out the documents one by one, like a prosecutor presenting irrefutable evidence to a hostile jury. "Trevor Hayes," he began, his tone almost conversational. $83,000 in gambling debts, accrued over the past 18 months. High-interest credit cards, a personal loan from First National you failed to disclose to your wife, and $42,000 of it directly to Marco Spinelli, who, as I'm sure you're acutely aware, isn't known for his patience or his forgiveness. He placed the highlighted financial record squarely on the table. Trevor's face went ashen. He looked like a man who had just seen his own ghost. "Amber Hayes," Dad continued, turning his flint-like gaze to her. She physically shrank back into the sofa cushions. 3 active, formal complaints with the State Real Estate Commission. Your broker, Linda Sharp, is prepared to testify under oath that you've been systematically falsifying appraisal documents to inflate commissions. Your career in real estate is finished. You will be lucky to avoid jail time. Amber opened her mouth, but no sound came out. All the color had drained from her face, leaving her expertly applied makeup looking like a garish mask. And Nicole Hayes. Dad didn't even bother to look at her, placing the notarized affidavit from the dental office manager on the table with a soft, final thud. Insurance fraud. A signed, sworn statement from your former office manager detailing your scheme. You are now effectively unemployable in any credible dental practice in this state. Your reputation is ash. The room was utterly, profoundly silent. You could have heard a pin drop. The arrogance and entitlement that had defined the Hayes siblings had evaporated, replaced by a raw, panicked, gut-wrenching fear. They had been exposed, completely and utterly. Their secrets, their shames, their crimes, were laid bare on my coffee table for everyone to see. Patricia Chin stepped forward, her posture perfect, her voice crisp and professional. "Mr. Hayes, I am Patricia Chin, representing Mrs. Hayes. We are filing for legal separation this morning. Given the profound financial deception, the attempted theft and planned fraudulent sale of a non-marital asset, and the intentionally intimidating and abusive environment you created with your sisters, we will be seeking full legal and physical custody of the minor children, child support based on your actual income, and a division of the actual remaining marital assets, meaning those you have not yet gambled away." You can't do this," Trevor whispered, his eyes wild, finally breaking from his stupor to plead with me directly. "Jessica, baby, please. We can fix this. We can go to counseling. It's a sickness. It's me, it's your Trevor. We're a family." I looked at the man I had loved, the man I had built a home and a family with, the father of my children, and I saw a pathetic, desperate stranger. There was no love left in my heart for him, only a cold, hollow pity. "Where are my car keys, Trevor?" I asked, my voice steady and clear, echoing the question from our fight the night before, but this time from a place of strength, not fear. The last of the fight left him. His shoulders slumped in utter defeat, his whole body seeming to deflate. He was a balloon with all the air let out. He reached into the pocket of his jeans, pulled out the key fob, and threw it onto the table amidst the damning documents. It landed with a cheap, metallic clatter. "Fine. Take it. Take everything. Just make it go away." But my father wasn't finished. He picked up the bill of sale with the note about forging my signature and held it up between his thumb and forefinger as if it were something contaminated. "This isn't over. This is material evidence of a conspiracy to commit fraud. We will be filing a criminal complaint with the district attorney's office. And as for you two," he finally turned his cold gaze to Amber and Nicole, who flinched under its weight, "I'm sure the relevant state licensing boards will be very interested in receiving these documents via certified mail first thing Monday morning." It was over. In less than 15 minutes, my father had not only reclaimed my property but had systematically dismantled their lives as thoroughly and mercilessly as they had tried to dismantle mine. As we walked out, I didn't look back. I didn't glance at the family photos on the wall or the toys scattered in the corner. I walked out of that house and I closed the door on that chapter of my life. I climbed into the driver's seat of my own car, my hands finally steady on the wheel. For the first time in 3 weeks, I was driving myself home. The first week after the confrontation was a surreal blur of legal paperwork, whispered conversations with my therapist, and the exhausting, sacred work of rebuilding a sense of normalcy for my children. We stayed with my dad, the familiar, sturdy rhythms of his house providing a sanctuary that felt both comforting and temporary. Owen and Lily, resilient in the way only children can be, began to thrive under the consistency and my father's quiet, steadfast love. The faint shadow of fear in their eyes when a door slammed too loudly was slowly being replaced by the bright light of laughter echoing from the backyard. My SUV was parked in Dad's driveway, a tangible symbol of a battle won. But every time I looked at it, I didn't just see a reclaimed possession, I saw Trevor's desperate handwriting, the name Marco, and the unspoken threat that still lingered in the air like the smell of ozone after lightning. It was a constant, low-grade hum of anxiety beneath the surface of our new peace. The legal machinery, fueled by Patricia Chen's ferocious competence, was grinding Trevor into compliance. Terrified of criminal charges for the attempted fraud, he was capitulating to every demand. Full custody was mine. Child support was set at a rate that would actually require him to be financially responsible. The house, which I'd once loved but now associated with that terrible kitchen confrontation, was being listed for sale. The proceeds, after paying off the mortgage, would be split, though my share was vastly larger since Dad's lawyer had successfully argued that Trevor had already squandered his portion of the marital assets through his deception and gambling. On paper, it was a sweeping victory. But a voice in the back of my mind, the one that had learned the hard way to be wary, whispered that men like Trevor don't fade away quietly. Desperation doesn't simply vanish, it finds new outlets. I was at the grocery store, actually enjoying the simple, profound act of loading my own bags into my car, when my phone buzzed with an unknown number. A cold dread, instinctual and immediate, trickled down my spine. I let it go to voicemail. A minute later, it buzzed again. Same number. The dread intensified, coiling in my stomach. With trembling fingers, I answered. Hello? Jessica? The voice was a ragged, airy whisper, stripped of all its usual condescending sweetness. It was Nicole. And she sounded truly, bone-deep terrified. It's Nicole. My grip on the phone tightened. How did you get this number? Please, just listen to me. You have to listen. It's Trevor. He's in real trouble. The kind of trouble you don't walk away from. A part of me, the part that was still healing, wanted to snap that it wasn't my problem. But the mother in me, the protector, stayed silent. I know he has debts, Nicole. That's his issue to solve. No! You don't understand. It's Marco. The man he owes the money to. He doesn't accept apologies or payment plans. Trevor was supposed to have the money from your car last week. He doesn't have it. Marco's guys, they paid him a visit at his new apartment last night. A wave of nausea washed over me. I leaned against the side of my car for support. Is he hurt? He's bruised. His ego is more shattered than anything, but he's scared. Truly scared. But that was just a warning. They said if he doesn't have half the money, $20,000, by Friday, they're not coming for him again. She took a shuddering breath that crackled down the line. They're coming for you. The world tilted on its axis. The parking lot, the blue sky, the mundane reality of my grocery run, it all swam before my eyes. What? Why me? I have nothing to do with this. You're his wife. Or you were. You have the kids. They see you as assets, leverage. Marco told Trevor, a man will find money he doesn't have to protect his family. They think threatening you will make Trevor magically produce the cash he stole from you. This was a nightmare spiraling into a deeper, darker level of hell. I had escaped one prison of manipulation only to be threatened with another, far more dangerous one, built on violence and criminal intent. Why are you telling me this, Nicole? After everything? Because I may be a lot of things, Jessica, she said, her voice breaking, a snob, a liar, a terrible sister-in-law, but I'm not a monster. I didn't sign up for this. None of us did. Not for this. And then she hung up, leaving me standing in the bright sunshine, cold to my very core. They were coming for me. For my children. I drove home in a blind panic, my heart hammering a frantic, terrified rhythm against my ribs. I burst through the front door, my composure utterly shattered. Dad! He was out of his chair in an instant, his book forgotten, taking in my pale, terror-stricken face. What happened? Are the kids okay? The kids are fine, I choked out, tears of sheer fear now streaming down my face. I told him everything, the words tumbling out in a frantic, disjointed jumble, Nicole's call, the threat from Marco's men, the Friday deadline, the targeting of me and the children. His face went through a rapid, terrifying transformation, from initial concern to sharp shock, and finally settling into a cold, terrifying calm that was more frightening than any outburst could ever be. He didn't waste a single second. He picked up his phone, his movements precise and efficient. Patricia, he said into the receiver, his voice like polished steel. We have a problem. A significant one. He explained the situation in blunt, unemotional terms. Then he called Tom, the investigator. Tom, Rob. I need everything you can get on Marco Spinelli. His operations, his known associates, his patterns, his favorite restaurant, I don't care. And I need an address for Trevor Hayes's new apartment. Now. He then did something that shocked me with its finality. He called Officer Martinez. It's Rob. We have a credible, specific threat against my daughter and grandchildren from a known criminal associate named Marco Spinelli. Yes, I know you can't post a guard. But I want it on record. A formal report filed right now. I'm coming down to the station. Within an hour, our quiet sanctuary had been transformed into the headquarters of a war room. Patricia Chin was on speakerphone, her sharp voice analyzing the legal angles. Tom was emailing documents that spit forth from the printer, detailing Marco Spinelli's sordid history. Dad was pacing, a contained force of nature, a general preparing for a siege. This is what we're going to do, Dad said, stopping his pacing and looking directly at me, his eyes holding mine with an intensity that demanded belief. We are not going to hide. We are not going to wait for them to come to us. We are going to end this. For good. On our terms. His plan was audacious, dangerous, and utterly brilliant. Friday arrived, heavy with a palpable, suffocating tension. We had moved the kids. Dad had called in a favor from Mike, a former foreman from his company, a man built like a refrigerator with a heart of gold and hands the size of hams. Mike had taken Lily and Owen to his family's remote cabin for a special camping adventure, no questions asked. The children were safe, and that knowledge was the only thing keeping me from completely unraveling. Dad and I then drove to my old, empty house. The for sale sign stood in the yard like a tombstone. We weren't going inside. We were waiting in his truck, parked discreetly down the street, the engine off. The silence in the cab was a physical presence. Just after 7 p.m., as the evening light began to bleed into twilight, a sleek, black sedan with deeply tinted windows glided to a stop in front of the house. It looked out of place in the quiet, family-oriented neighborhood. Two large men in dark, nondescript leather jackets got out. They moved with a casual, predatory confidence, scanning the street before approaching the front door. My heart felt like it was going to beat its way out of my chest. This was it. As one of the men tested the doorknob, finding it locked, my dad started the engine of his truck with a low roar. He didn't speed. He pulled up calmly, strategically, positioning his large pickup truck directly behind the black sedan, effectively blocking it in. He got out, his movements slow and deliberate, his posture not aggressive, but immovably solid. I stayed in the passenger seat, my phone held up, recording the entire scene as he had instructed, my hands trembling so badly I had to brace them against the dashboard. "Can we help you?" Dad asked, his voice conversational, yet it carried an undeniable authority in the quiet street. The two men turned, their expressions shifting from casual intimidation to wary surprise. They were not used to being confronted. The bigger one, the clear leader, recovered first. "We're here to see Trevor Hayes," he said, his tone implying it was none of our business. "He doesn't live here," Dad said, taking a step closer. He wasn't a tall man, but in that moment, he seemed to loom over them. "But I think you're here to deliver a message for Marco Spinelli. You can deliver it to me." The men exchanged a quick, uncertain glance. This was not part of their script. They dealt in fear and surprise, not in calm, prepared opposition. "My name is Robert Monroe. The woman in that truck is my daughter, Jessica. Trevor Hayes is nothing to her. He has no money. He has no access to her or her children." Dad took another step, and though he was one man against two, he seemed larger than both of them combined. "And if you or anyone associated with Marco Spinelli ever comes near my daughter or my grandchildren again," his voice dropped, becoming low and deadly serious, "you will be dealing with me. And I promise you, I am a far more permanent and complicated problem than a $40,000 debt." He then pulled a thick manila envelope from his jacket. "This is a copy of the formal police report filed this afternoon, detailing your specific threat against my family. The original is with my lawyer, along with all the evidence we have on Trevor's dealings with Marco, bank records, witness statements, the works. If anything happens to my family, a flat tire, a threatening phone call, a strange car driving by too slowly, that envelope gets opened by every law enforcement agency from here to the state capital. We don't have Marco's money. But we have enough to make his life, and the lives of everyone who works for him, very, very complicated. Is that message clear enough for him? The two men were stunned into silence. The leader looked from my father's unwavering face to the envelope, to the phone I was clearly holding in the truck. He saw a man who was not afraid, a man who had preempted their move, a man who had the resources and the will to fight back in a way they couldn't easily intimidate. This wasn't a desperate gambler, this was a fortress. The leader nodded slowly, a grudging, professional respect in his eyes. "Crystal," he said, his voice flat. Without another word, they got back into their car. Dad stood his ground, not moving his truck until they had awkwardly maneuvered their way out from behind it. They drove off, and the street was quiet once more. We stood there in the silence, the only sound the distant chirping of crickets. It was over. Truly over. Dad turned to me. "Let's go get our kids." The power of a father's love, standing firm against true evil. If that scene gave you chills, type "Robert Monroe is a hero" in the comments. 1 year later. The sound of Lily's unrestrained laughter floated from the backyard of our new home, a cozy, bright bungalow with a wide porch and a sprawling maple tree I'd bought with my share of the divorce settlement. It was in a friendly neighborhood with sidewalks and good schools, a place we had chosen together, a clean slate. Owen, now 4, was chasing soap bubbles that his grandfather was blowing from a little wand, his little legs pumping with unbridled joy, his giggles mixing with his sister's. I was packing a picnic basket for a trip to the park. My basket. My kids. My life. The simple ownership of these things was no longer a burden, but a profound privilege. The divorce had been finalized 6 months ago. Trevor, after his encounter with Marco's man and the subsequent, final confrontation with my father, had been a broken man. In a shocking moment of clarity, he had checked himself into a residential treatment program for gambling addiction. As part of our agreement, he had agreed to supervised visitation only, a decision I made to protect the children while leaving the door open for a healthy relationship, if he could ever become healthy himself. He was trying, in his own flawed way, and for the first time, I genuinely hoped he would, for his own sake, and for the distant day when my children might want to understand the man who was their father. Amber had officially lost her real estate license after a swift investigation by the commission. The last I heard, she was working as a hostess at an upscale restaurant, a humbling but necessary fall from grace. Nicole was a receptionist at a car dealership, the insurance fraud on her permanent record closing more dignified doors. The consequences of their actions had been absolute and unforgiving. As I zipped up the basket, my dad's truck pulled into the driveway. He came around back, not through the house, because he knew he'd find us in the yard. He swooped a squealing Owen up into the air, eliciting a fresh wave of giggles, before giving Lily a one-armed hug as she showed him a dandelion she had picked. "Ready for the park, Grandpa?" Lily asked, grabbing his calloused hand. "Always, sweet pea," he said, smiling down at her before his eyes met mine over the top of her head. They were the same steady, sure eyes that had found me on that subway train. They were the eyes that had seen my brokenness and refused to accept it. They were the eyes that had fought my battles and, in doing so, had taught me how to fight my own. Sometimes, the worst moments of your life are the brutal, necessary catalysts for the best ones. Losing my car felt like the end of the world, but it was the violent, painful beginning of finding my voice, my strength, and my self-worth. It led me, circuitously and painfully, back to the one man who had never, ever stopped believing in me, who had shown me what unconditional love and protection truly looked like. My father's 2 words on the subway, "Don't worry," had been a sacred promise. And he had kept it, not by fighting all my battles for me, but by standing steadfastly beside me, his belief in me a shield, until I was strong enough to raise my own sword. I was driving my own life now. And this time, I would never, ever give anyone else the keys. And that is the powerful, emotional conclusion to our saga. From the depths of betrayal to the pinnacle of self-reliance and a love that never wavers. If this story moved you, if it gave you chills or hope, please let us know in the comments. Tell us where you're watching from and what part resonated most with you. Your support means everything to this channel. If you want more stories of overcoming adversity, of family, and of redemption, please show your support by liking this video, subscribing to the channel, and hitting that notification bell. Thank you for being part of this journey with Jessica. Your engagement is what makes this community so special.